Hello there ladies and gentlemen, how you doing? It's Alexander Hilly123 here and it's time for a new video. And as you can see from the title today, it is a video of me detailing my top 10 albums from the band Katatonia. That is Katatonia with a K, not a C, not to be confused with a Welsh pop band. These are the dark, gothic, rock, metal, Swedish metalers. And yeah, it would probably be fair to say that these guys are among my favourite bands of all time. They're up there. They may well be my very favourite, though it is quite hard to say. And they've made 10 albums, and I thought, well, it might be a good idea with my new Logitech HD Pro 920 webcam to just give it a little test and make this video whilst talking about something that's very important to me. You know, I did my top 50 albums of the 1990s a good 2 or 3 years ago, and I enjoyed doing that. Not many people watched, but I enjoyed the process of making them and just detailing my favourite albums. And I do like making content like that and then coming back to it years later and just checking out on it. You know, it's quite peculiar. It sounds narcissistic, but I don't do it that often. It's just weird though. When you make a video, you come back to it 3 or 4 years later and you forget about it. It's really bizarre. If you don't make videos on YouTube or any content like that, you probably won't relate to what I'm saying. But anyway, I'm going to quickly pass through these. I would love to talk in more detail, but the video would be very, very long then, and it's not going to be a thrilling video as it is. I'm guessing only hardcore Katatonia fans might find their way onto this. And I do hope that hardcore Katatonia fans do not get butthurt with my choices here, especially with number 10, because it is the first ever album, Dance of December Souls. And this is like I said, the band's first album released in 1993, although the two founding members of the band, Mr. Jonas Renks and Anders Nyström, yes, I will be butchering all the Swedish names in this video, these songs were made initially before 1993, I do believe, since like 1990, 1991, some of them anyway, when the guys were only like 16, 17 years old, so they started so young, absolutely incredible. But I'll be honest with you, I still haven't given this album the attention it deserves. I know it's not really seen as a masterpiece, but it's still got some solid tracks on it. It's just that I really struggle to get into this album. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, it is in part due to the vocals. I like clean vocals, and this album has next to no clean vocals whatsoever. They're all screeched, screamed, and growled vocals. By the Dark Lord himself, Mr. Jonas Rensk. A lot of these tracks are like 13-14 minutes long. There's 8 in total, running at a time of 53.5 minutes. I really do enjoy Without God, Tomb of Insomnia, a few others, but like I say, I'm a huge Katatonia fan. There's going to be some fans that really aren't happy with me here. I still want to get into this album properly, because I'll be honest with you, it's the only Katatonia album that I've never properly listened to. But because of that, I've got to put it in as my number 10, my least favourite album. It's a bit of a cop-out, but there you go. But at number 9, it is the 4th full album from 1999, and it is Tonight's Decision. Absolutely fantastic artwork for this album. I'm sure fans of the band will know what I'm talking about. And this was the band's second full album with exclusively clean vocals by Mr. Jonas Rensk. And this is during the period where they were very accessible in my opinion, but I actually think this works to the band's detriment on this particular album. That being said, looking at the track listing, I still can't really say that I dislike any of these tracks. And I do really enjoy the more progressive, longer tracks here, such as Had to Leave, In Death a Song, Black Session, which is without a shadow of a doubt one of the best songs I've ever done, the Jeff Buckley cover, Nightmares by the Sea, A Darkness Coming. The fact of the matter is, this is number 9 in my list. It's still a great album. I just believe that maybe this album's catchiness and kind of melodic and poppy kind of chorus, verse, chorus works against it somewhat, but this is still a great album. It was so hard to make this list. Number 9, Tonight's Decision. And number 8 now in the list is an album that I'm going to be honest with you, in a couple of years time it could find itself number 5 or number 6, and it's because I haven't fully digested it yet. It is the latest album, The Fall of Hearts, which was released May 20th of this year, and it's only September now, so it's been like, what, June, July, 4 months that it's been out. But I'm a busy man these days, and I don't get to listen to music as much as I did when I was in my teens, now that I'm 27. Even in my early 20s I had more time, but yeah, I don't have so much time now. But I listened to this album a good 5 or 6 times through, and I still don't think I'm fully aware of all its nuances, because this album is a lot more progressive than the band has ever done. It's the most progressive thing they've done. You know, these tracks, a lot of them over 5 minutes long. The album itself runs in at 1 hour and 7 minutes. There's a lot, like I say, to digest here. But it is the heavier tracks and the more immediate tracks that stick with me. If it's not SERAC or Shifts, Last Song Before the Fade, Last Song Before the Fade and SERAC are 2 of the heavier songs here, and the songs that I, like straight off the bat. But there are a few growers here, but I also think there are a few weaker songs. But like I say, I still don't fully believe I've taken this album in yet. I do think that with the next album the band released, though, they've got to give us something a little bit different. Night is a New Day, Dead End Kings, I love, as you'll find out. But this album, I think a lot of fans won't enjoy this due to the more progressive style. They've obviously had influences of dark progressive rock, such as, I don't know, Porcupine Tree, Opeth, shit like that. Bands that I love. There's a Porcupine Tree poster there, but I'm not sure what I think of this album yet. It's a solid album, another solid album from the band. They've made nothing but great albums, but I think they've made many better. But there we have it, number 8. We'll see how time is with The Fall of Hearts, whether it gets better or worse with time. But at number 7 now is an album that had a lot of criticism when it came out. The fact of the matter is these songs are absolutely fantastic. It's just that the initial production wasn't. And that reminds me that I've still not listened to the remaster of this. It is Viva, Emptiness, released in 2003. It is the band's 6th album, yet again exclusively clean vocals. Yet it saw the band go into a bit of a new metal vibe. Now, that is going to be slander and a dirty word and whatnot to a lot of the fans, but you've got a bit of an alternative metal sound here. You've also, I think it's the first proper album, or the second proper album, with the drummer, I think his name is Daniel Likevist, I think, and he is a great drummer. And The Fall of Hearts, I didn't mention it there, but The Fall of Hearts is the first album that he's not drummed on since this album, and they've missed him because he's a great drummer, and he really adds to that kind of alternative metal sound on this album. And it's a typical Katatonia affair, like the Wikipedia page here says. Its main subjects are loneliness, social relations, crime, lying, and depression. It's all the fun of the fur with Katatonia, of course, as we know. But I really enjoy this album. Ghost of the Sun, Sleeper, Criminals. There's not a weaker track on it. I struggle to dislike many Katatonia tracks. I think it's really solid. But the production, it's kind of famous within the metal community and within the Katatonia fan base. What happened? The band tried to produce this album themselves, and it was a bit of a clusterfuck, basically. I've still never listened to the remaster, but although I do think this album is solid, due to the production problems, because it is kind of messy, I'm putting it at number 7. But if you've never listened to this album and you're a fan of, I don't know, hard rock metal, I really kind of think this would be a good introduction to the band if you've never listened to them before and you like a lot of hard rock and metal. There we go. Number 7, Viva, Emptiness. Number 6 now. I feel like I'm not giving these albums the proper kind of discussion they deserve. To be perfectly honest with you, I could easily do a single video on each of these albums. This band mean that much to me. But anyway, we'll move on to number 6 now, and it is Dead End Kings, and it's an album that I wish was 3rd or 4th, because I remember when this came out, the stronger tracks on this album are among my very favourites, from this band. They are ones like The Racing Heart, Buildings, Ambitions, LETHEAN, and Dead Letters. They're like the top tier tracks. Then you've got a few like First Prayer, The Parting, The One You Are Looking For Is Not Here. And then you've got a few tracks that I just cannot get into and I find a bit dull, and maybe they sound like B-sides. I mean, this is number 6, but if it wasn't for those weaker tracks, and there are a few stronger tracks here, then this would be like 3 or 4 in the list. Still a fantastic album though. Released in August 2012, and this sees the band, in my opinion, coming up with a mixture of really chuggy, heavy alternative metal with prog edge, with the typical gorgeous ballads and the emotional sound in the side of the band as well. The production is off the charts, it's bloody brilliant, and it's a really strong album. And obviously Night Is the New Day is ahead of this, which I'll speak of soon, but this sometimes I believe is better than Night Is a New Day, but I've just about said that Night Is a New Day is better than this. But it's a fantastic album. Some people didn't like this, fair play, but I absolutely adore it. The chuggier tracks, the heavier tracks, and the softer songs as well. Number 5 now, it is Last Fair Deal, Gone Down. I've got to say here straight away that I love the album artwork of this. A lot of people on YouTube have said that it looks like something you get off Silent Hill, and it certainly is. The reference in the title is named after a song by a blues singer called Robert Johnson, someone who I've never listened to, but I'm into like some old school folk music, but I've never really got into blues, but I know that he was very famous within that style of music, and it's a really cool name for an album as well. This album is, the production is not as clean at all as it is on albums like the latest, The Fall of Hearts, and basically everything the band have done since The Great Cold Distance, where the production is so clean and just beautiful. It's kind of muddy with this album, but it works really well, and the introductions of all the songs on this album are done so well, and you can tell that they paid special attention to that, and they wanted they did it on purpose. Basically, I'm talking here about songs like the opening track, Dispossession, Chrome, what have we got here, Tonight's Music perhaps, Clean Today, Don't Tell a Soul, The Future of Speech. There are quite a lot of long intros here where the singing only begins after a minute. A lot of really heavy drumming here as well, and they've still got a sound that kind of sounds like The Cure, a metal version of The Cure, if you will. And this is a very, very, very special album, without a shadow of a doubt. I don't really think there are any weak tracks here, to be perfectly honest with you. There's a few easier tracks to get into, like We Must Bury You, Tear Gas. That solo in Tear Gas, there's so much emotion in it, it's unbelievable. Downtrodden lyrics as always, and a bit of a poppier vibe on tracks like Sweet Nurse and Passing Bird, where I believe Jonas says so much fucking emo, which means emo, and he says it's false, I know. Love that. But yeah, it's number 5 in the list, Last Fair Deal, Gone Down. And yeah, bloody amazing. I really want to speak more of these, but I've not really gone into much detail. I started recording. Probably regret it later, but what the heck. Alright, number 4 on the list, ladies and gentlemen, is Night Is the New Day. And I got into Katatonia late 2008, early 2009. I was just starting to listen to certain tracks off like Viva, Emptiness and The Great Cold Distance. Those are the albums that I started with in terms of tracks, but when this came out I downloaded it immediately. I can't remember, but I'm pretty damn certain I illegally downloaded it. I don't think I purchased it. Since then I've bought merchandise from the band and I've bought albums worth of material. That's the way it works in the modern day. So when this album came out, I was so hyped for it, and it didn't let me down. The production was the cleanest and the best it had been at this time. The progressive edge was seen a hell of a lot, but there are also a lot of different instruments in this album, and it's an album where I think they became so much more than a metal band, and they became a kind of progressive band. And it was at this time as well, people don't really think about it, but 2009, Spotify had just started. Last FM is complete shit now, but back then it really helped me find a lot of new music, and I think it probably brought them in a lot of new fans, this album. I remember I even made my mum listen to the more melodic tracks on the album. My mum's no metalhead, but it bridges that gap absolutely fantastically. You've got songs on here such as Forsaker, which is very doomy, and there are songs on here that hark back to their early days, yet at the same time there are songs on here that are so beautiful they never belong on the first couple of albums, such as Departer. Although I say that, I think about what's it called, Day, off Brave Murder Day, but it's just a great amalgamation of everything the band have been, really. Obviously there's no growled vocals here, but Idle Blood, Departer, Day and Then the Shade, New Night, Inheritance, Nephilium. This is probably more rock than metal. It's just everything that makes this band really good. But I'd say this album is where you see that progressive edge come in, so it probably lost them some fans as well as gained them some fans. But I absolutely adore it. And now for number 3, we are going way, way back to 1996, and this is definitive proof that if doom metal was done good, then I would love it. I do like a bit of doom here and there. I like some Draconian albums. I love me some old kind of My Dying Bride, Paradise Lost, Anathema as well when they were a doom band. But I tend to like a few tracks, and then I kind of tend to get bummed out on others, and I'm getting bored and whatnot, and I can't be arsed listening to them. But this album, for me, I have listened to certain doom albums, but like I say, I'm no expert. But this album is utterly astonishing. You've got Mr. Michael Ackerfeld of Opeth on the harsh vocals. You've got Jonas on the clean vocals for a few tracks, and I think he's on the drums here as well. Anders Nystrom on the guitar, of course. You've got a few other guest appearances. I think Dan Swano is doing shit behind the scenes of production. The intros and the outro to this album are amazing, intertwining gorgeous riffs and solos, and Michael Ackerfeld's vocals just have me wishing on this album that they'd managed to do a few other albums together. I'm a big fan overall of Opeth. I do prefer the cleaner side. I love metal heavy music, but I like doom metal more than death metal. When I was in my late teens, early 20s, I listened to a lot more metal than I do now that I'm 27. But I still love to listen to something new that sounds fresh, if it's kind of gothic or doomy. But death, not so much. And because it's about the pacing, it's slower. This album, it's got thrashier parts, but for the most part, these are really brooding, atmospheric songs that just work incredibly well. And I'm looking at the album here, 6 tracks, 41 minutes in length. Brave, then Murder, then Day, Rain Room, 12, and End Time. I mean, I think my favourite track on the album is probably 12. The introduction to that song is like 3 minutes, like I said, intertwining guitars. It's just absolutely astonishing. I could listen to that intro all day. I really could. And then it abruptly stops and Michael Ackerfeld just starts fucking screaming. But you've got the one slow, clean vocal song on here, which is incredible, which is Dare. You've got Brave and Murder. Rain Room, which is possibly my favourite doom metal song ever. It just fucking thunders in there. It's unstoppable, and End Time as well. And they also did an EP, Katatonia and Michael Ackerfeld, and it's called Sounds of Decay. And if you've never listened to Sounds of Decay, then I highly recommend doing so if you do love Brave Murder Day. There's 3 tracks on it: Nowhere, At Last, and Inside the Fall. Like, this is really heavy music on this album. Brave Murder Day and Sounds of Decay are proper fucking brutal, but it never loses that elegance and beauty, and that's because it is Doom with death vocals. And I've never found any music and any other bands that have been able to replicate this sound. Because I know you should say, well, bands need to make their own sound and whatnot. I agree, but I want another band to make music like Brave Murder Day and Sounds of Decay, because one of my problems with death metal vocals is I can't understand what the fuck they're saying. I'm actually looking on Wikipedia. The rating there for this album is 1.5 stars out of 5. That's a disgrace. It's bloody amazing, Sounds of Decay. But with Michael Ackerfeld's vocals, when they're slowed down at a doom metal pace, I totally understand what he's saying, and it's just full of emotion, beauty, and anger, and it's fucking incredible. It is amazing. But anyway, my second favourite album from the band now. I'm looking at this, my top 2. You know, at times I've been unhappy with my list, but I'm still wondering whether I've made the right call with the first 2 albums. Because at number 2, it is The Great Cold Distance, a very contentious album among fans, because this album contains some of the catchiest songs the band have ever put out there, with full videos as well. And this was the dawn of social media in early 2006, so the band brought on board a lot of fans who weren't old school doom metal fans, including myself, of course. But this album has 12 tracks, 52 minutes in length, a hell of a lot of songs that are around about the same amount of time. The production is amazing, the vocals, the lyrics, even the song titles, even the art cover, nearly everything about this album is amazing. I'd also say there's a little bit of a Tool influence with some of the guitars on this album. You've got the progressive edge, which was starting to become ever more evident, ever more clear. Leaders, Deliberation, Soil Song, My Twin. Even the track listing for this album, for me, is perfect. These songs are catchy, but they're heavy. In my opinion, this is the heaviest album they've done since Brave Murder Day. I think it's the most metallic album since that album. But at the same time, tracks such as July, My Twin, and Soil Song and Deliberation, yeah, they're very catchy, and they've got a pop structure as well. But I just think it integrates those two things together incredibly well. I mean, you cannot deny that tracks like Consternation, Follower, Rusted, Increase, they've got incredibly technical and heavy guitar parts to them. There's obviously 2 guitars. You look at here on the Wikipedia page, there's additional guitar, rhythm guitar, lead guitar. There is a lot of guitars on this album, and you can tell that it's a very technical album. And I would personally say, as a music noob, meaning I love my music but I don't know the technicalities with music, I'd never played guitar, never played drums, never played anything, but I can just tell that there's a lot more going on in the mix with this album. And I've not even spoke about it, and I should have, but Katatonia with this album onwards have also had a bit of an electronic influence as well, to be perfectly honest with you. Kind of a trip-hop vibe going on, which also began after this with Night Is a New Day. It's never taken over the sound fully, but you can tell there's kind of a massive Attack influence and shit like that with certain tracks. But I don't have a bad thing to say about this album. But it's a contentious one because some people aren't too convinced, but hey, there we go. We've all got our opinions, and that's absolutely fine. The album finishes off with In the White, The Itch, and Journey Through Pressure. The lyrics, particularly on this album, mean a hell of a lot to me. But number one, ladies and gentlemen, is an album which I still to this day think is a little bit misunderstood, and I would consider a masterpiece. Now, this album is without a shadow of a doubt less varied than The Great Cold Distance and a hell of a lot of the other songs on this list. It is quite monotonous when you're starting to get into it, and there aren't many differences within the sound and within the production, within the music, within the vocals, blah blah blah, everything. You get what I'm saying? But it does what it aims to do so well that I think it is of masterpiece status, and it is none other than the third studio album, the first with purely clean vocals. It's Discouraged Ones, released April 1998. And I was checking a lot of review websites. I checked Sputnik Music, Rate Your Music, although there's full of hipster music snobs on Rate Your Music, it's full of wankers, and a lot of other websites as well. And it just astounds me that this album is rated alongside albums such as Dance of December Souls, Tonight's Decision, and Viva Emptiness, because I really think this album is a step above those albums, maybe 2 steps above, and is even better than everything they've ever done, because it does what it aims to do so well. And what I mean by that is this album has exclusively clean vocals, just like the album after it, Tonight's Decision, in 1999. This is 1998. So what's the difference between this album and Tonight's Decision? Because obviously the album before, Discouraged Ones, here in 1998, is Brave Murder Day, doom metal, growled vocals, very technical, beautiful guitars as well, but ridiculously heavy. The main difference between Discouraged Ones and Tonight's Decision, though, is that Tonight's Decision has a lot of pop hooks and it's sing-along. This album is so downtrodden, so downhearted, so dreary, so dark, that it is almost astonishing. The reverb on the vocals, Jonas at times sounds like he's almost crying when he's singing here. And his vocals improved over time. I've not even spoke about this and I really wish I had. And if anyone's watching this and have got to the end, then they must be hardcore Katatonia fans, so I bow down to you. But his vocals on this album, because they're not that strong, they really work with the vibe of the album. This is, like I say, so downtrodden. And also I was speaking about how the band have got an influence of trip hop and kind of folk music, but they've also got a kind of shoegaze influence as well. They're huge fans of Slowdive, who released an album called Suvlaki, and it is also one of my favourite albums of all time. And funnily enough, I don't really think of Suvlaki when I listen to this album, but it did give the band inspiration, and that's absolutely fine by me. But yeah, it says here that this is the last Katatonia release with Michael Oritoft, and the last release with Jonas Rensk on drums as well. But this album has 11 tracks, I think. Yeah, running at 47 minutes. I Break, Stalemate, Dead House, Relention, Cold Ways, Gone, Last Resort, Nerve, Saw You, Drowning, Instrumental, and Distrust. This album is hypnotic, it is monotonous, and when I listened to it at first, I really didn't like it. But if you can give it time and you get into it and you like dark music and you like metal music, you like gothic music, if you will, then you could well fall in love with it. It was like the summer of 2010 when I realised that this album was utterly incredible, and I just found myself listening to it at least once a night. In a pretty dark time in my life, really. I'm in a much better place now, but I'm not a person who listens to music. I'm in a good mood, I'm going to listen to happy music. I'm in a bad mood, I'm going to listen to music that makes me feel like that even more, or kind of accentuates it, if you will. I just listen to good music. If I've got my music on shuffle, or if I'm listening to proper albums from start to finish, doesn't really matter. And as such, I still listen to this album quite a bit, to be honest with you. You know, I like dark music. I like some pop music here and there, some electronic music and whatnot, but progressive rock and kind of gothic metal, doom as well, is something that I love, and I'm always interested in listening to new music of that kind. But Discouraged Ones, ladies and gentlemen, is quite simply a full-blown masterpiece. But anyway, this video is now running in at over 30 minutes long. It's been one hell of a ramble. I doubt anyone's watched it, but I'm just testing out my new Logitech webcam. And that's been my top 10 albums of the band Katatonia. And if you've never listened to the band, please do. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.